Welcome to Slow News Day Live. My name is Steve Poikinen. I'm here in lockdown Boulder Creek, California. And y'all, if you were with me this morning, you saw one hell of an interview with John McAfee. If you've been with the channel at all, you know that when some serious shit goes down in Venezuela, Slow News Day talks about it. I am joined this afternoon by my good friend Jason Carney. Jason, how are you, my brother?
Doing great. How you doing?
I'm still riding it out from this morning with McAfee. That was fucking nuttier than a shithouse rat. It was great.
That's what you got to go for. He sounds like a fantastic talk. Having a conversation with him sounds fantastic. I'm just still perplexed at Kurt Loder 75. I'm still trying to deal with that right now. That's for me. That's my own personal thing. I'll work on that, but we'll get through the show. I promise.
For anybody under the age of 35, Kurt Loder was a guy who used to talk about the news on a channel called Music Television. Now, I am aware that music television these days is pretty much reality TV and a twerk competition, which is cool. It is, it's cool. But Kurt Loder was part of that original MTV crew, and apparently is trying to do his best to both outlive and outlook like Iggy Pop. Um, so let's uh, let's
Oh,
get to this shit, shall we?
yes.
Um,
Oh, fuck.
it turns out, okay, let's just go to the article and kind of break it down a little bit. Former U.S. Special Ops soldier. All right. So this happened just a couple of days ago. Former member of the U.S. Army Special Forces reportedly helped organize a military expedition aimed at ousting Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. According to the AP, ex-Green Beret Jordan Gaudreau, which is the fakest fucking name I've ever heard, was responsible for training a contingent of 300 Venezuelan army deserters in Colombia who were to penetrate Venezuela in a heavily armed caravan and seize the capital of Caracas within 96 hours. The decorated veteran of U.S. wars in Iraq and Afghanistan reportedly began his involvement with Venezuela in February 2019. At the time, Gaudreau's firm, Silvercore, provided security at a concert organized in the Colombian border in the city of Cucuta, which was part of a U.S.-backed opposition effort to force humanitarian aid into Venezuela. If you were watching the show last year around this time, I believe I had John Kiriakou on like right a couple of days after this happened, so
Mm-hmm.
we could talk about it. It's a great interview. Please go check that out. Back to the story, skipping down just a little bit. Um, let's see. Last May, in the wake of a failed opposition military putsch, Gaudreau met with Donald Trump's personal bodyguard, Keith Schiller, as well as Lester Toledo, senior representative of Venezuelan self-proclaimed interim president, fake fucking president Juan Guaido, in Miami. Toledo subsequently introduced Gaudreau to a retired Venezuelan Major General, Cliver uh, Alcala, during a meeting in Bogota. Both Toledo and Schiller are said to have ended all contact with Gaudreau after their respective meetings with him, which is interesting. Former commander of Venezuela's Guyana Integral Defense region, who broke with the Maduro government in 2016, Alcala headed 3 training camps for low-ranking soldiers who had deserted during the 2019 humanitarian aid operation. Among the recruits was former Venezuelan National Guard soldier alleged to have been involved in the August 2018 drone assassination attempt against Maduro. Military expedition first entered the media limelight when an arms shipment was seized by Colombian authorities in early March. AP reports the cache contained newly purchased arms and tactical equipment valued at 150 grand. Jason, what are you thinking about all this so far?
I've got my thoughts. Let's continue down the rabbit hole because it's just going to get worse. For me, what I want to touch on, what I want everybody in the audience to think about as we continue this particular article, What's it going to take for the international community and Americans at home to end the imperialistic ambitions of a bunch of rich white guys in Washington, D.C.? Think about that as we go through.
Um, let's see. Following the seizure of the cache of arms, the Venezuelan government publicly accused Alcala of plotting a military incursion. The next day, on March 26th, Alcala was indicted by the U.S. Department of Justice on narco-terrorism charges, alongside a host of current and former high-ranking officials, including President Nicolas Maduro. This is when they put out the $15 million bounty on Nicolas Maduro's head. Alcala promptly denied the charges, though he confirmed the intercepted weapons were destined for the caravan, claiming the operation had been coordinated with Guaido and U.S. advisors. The general later turned himself over to Colombian authorities, despite there being no order for his extradition, and is currently in U.S. custody in New York. Let's see. Oh, this is the neat part, and this is what we're going to show in the next article. For his part, Alcala has claimed that he signed a contract with his American advisors, a Miami-based Guaido advisor, J.J. Rendon, accusing the self-proclaimed interim president of betraying the agreement. Rendon, who has previously been accused of working with far-right former Colombian President Alvaro Uribe and U.S. aid to foment deadly street violence in Venezuela, denied the existence of a contract. We, however, by going to the next Venezuela analysis article, have pictures of the supposed or the reported contract. And I think we can full screen this too, Josh. The General Services Agreement. Let me kind of take a peek at this real quick. I'm sight reading all of this basically for the second time. Yeah, no, I mean, I guess those are supposed to be Guaido's initials there, and this is a pretty standard merked up contract. Yeah, let's explore this a little bit, Jay, because it really, since the 2018 assassination attempt by drone, it has been open season on Venezuela for the Trump regime, for little ass parrots like Marco Rubio, and a bunch of little, opportunists like fake ambassador Carlos Vecchio, who was an Exxon lawyer and lobbyist, and this guy, this Juan Guaido, that nobody fucking knew until he announced that he was president.
Well, let's touch on a couple of different things here when it comes to this. This isn't original. This isn't the first time the United States has interfered with a foreign country's democratically elected government. Let's take a look at Honduras. Let's take a look at Bolivia, Nicaragua, other Central and Latin American countries in which the United States has pretty much overthrown the democratically held governments that the people elected to put in, which happens to be of leftist nature. You have the United States that consistently interferes. What scares isn't the right word. What's different about this is the blatant nature of it. It's as though the United States has gotten really like pretense of, oh, we're just promoting democracy, we're promoting we're liberty, we're trying to take care of people's rights to blah blah blah, and it's just been outright, especially with the $15 million bounty on Nicolas
Which is
Maduro's
illegal,
head.
by the way. Did you know that our government is not allowed to put a hit out on somebody else's head of state, regardless of whether or not they brought in a fake fucking president of their own?
But that's the thing. You have somebody who is from the National Assembly in Venezuela, essentially their Congress, no one ever heard of, you touched on it perfectly, who's an opportunist, who's a far-right type. He would make, what's his face, Alex Jones, Richard Spencer. He is the Venezuelan Richard Spencer at the end of the day, and he's been promoted to this presidency without a vote by the people. The people of Venezuela have no say in what happens. They elected Nicolas Maduro. They did not elect Juan Guaido. And for this to happen, it's just absolute nonsense. And the imperialistic nature of the United States being so blatant about it now, I don't know if it's because the Trump administration is a little slow on the uptake, or they just don't care anymore. There's no more pretense to democracy, liberty, and freedom and all that horse shit. It's just, we don't like your government. Bye.
Well, and here's the thing. I mean, we know that Venezuela is sitting on the second largest oil reserves on the planet. We know for a fact this is about the acquisition of natural resources and the stamping out of any perceived left-wing or actual socialist government, which you and I have talked about this a number of times. The country of Venezuela itself is not a socialist country. They do have some nationalized businesses and their national resources, but the workers do not own the means of production. This is not a largely cooperative led country in terms of the business community.
Still capitalist in nature.
Yeah, but still good enough, left enough for not just the Trump administration, but every administration going back well into the 50s has tried to create some turmoil, depose a leader. Hugo Chavez had a number of assassination attempts on his life. And this is just the continuation of U.S. empire under Donald Trump, who has become little more than a caretaker for the George H.W. Bush administration and their aims.
Well, that's my thing right now. I'm typing up about some of the numbers specifically of the improvement of the life of the people of Venezuela, not the rich, not the elite class, but the normal everyday Venezuelan under Hugo Chavez and later on Nicolas Maduro. When it comes to literacy rates, when it comes to poverty, knocking the poverty level down, it's just it was absolutely night and day when Hugo Chavez took over. And yes, everybody's gonna be like, oh well, that's because oil was $150 a barrel, blah blah blah. No, the programs in and of itself, much like Bolivia, was very successful in taking care of the minority population, the indigenous peoples, and also educating and medical care for each and every citizen. It's been one of the absolute most amazing things, and yet the United States and neoliberals, whether they be Democratic or Republican, will tell you that Nicolas Maduro is a monster, Hugo Chavez was a monster, socialism is bad, and our way is good. That leaves people in poverty, that has educational divisions, class divisions, and it's just, at the end of the day, it gets very frustrating because it's there, it's in front of our eyes, it isn't a conspiracy theory. All the information is right there, and yet we still have people buying into the nonsense that the U.S. government is peddling, that Nicolas Maduro and the Venezuelan people are either ignorant, or they're a rogue regime, or it's corrupt. I don't understand it.
Well, look, oh, holy shit, real quick. Marmiar in the Panhandle, thank you for the super chat very much. Sorry I missed your take with McAfee, who was out in the garden. Hey, look, time well spent in the garden is time well spent. And yes, I will absolutely go after Michael Mann's dumbass every time he posts something fucking just ridiculously stupid like he did earlier today. So here, I mean, I'm going to go to this Popular Resistance article that I sent you real quick, because they're about a third or half the way down. There's a little bit more background on this that we can go into specifically, and it relates to what you were just talking about. It says, just days before the 3rd May attack, both U.S. Special Envoy for Venezuela, our good friend Elliot Abrams, and U.S. Secretary of State Mike, you're a piece of shit, Pompeo, stepped up their provocative statements against Maduro. Abrams declared that Maduro's days are counted, while Pompeo, in a press conference on April 29th, assured journalists the multilateral effort to restore democracy is continuing to build momentum, and that he had updated plans to reopen the U.S. Embassy in Caracas. Coincidence? But no. From the whole sordid affair, several conclusions can be drawn. The first is that, for all his denials, fake fucking President Juan Guaido is closely linked to different attempts to remove Maduro from office. Even if you leave the famous contract to one side, Guaido's paw prints are everywhere, as the article and we have just Jason detailed above. The military deserters involved participated in his April 2019 botch coup. The main U.S. mercenary involved provided security for the humanitarian aid concert. He also participated in meetings between Trump advisors and Guaido's agents in Miami. Of course, as the attempt failed, he claims to have nothing to do with it. And really, like, why would you, Jason, why would you be like, yeah, I organized and helped launch a failed military incursion into Venezuela? Like, that's not something that you get to boast about on your CV.
Bay of Pigs 2.0, and if you think about it, why would you want to attach yourself to something that is not popularly supported by the Venezuelan people? The Venezuelan people aren't clamoring for someone to replace Nicolas Maduro. They're not saying, give us Juan Guaido, give us Juan Guaido. They're not saying that. So, of course, he would try to get as far away as possible from this particular deal that he helped orchestrate with this contract. And it's hilarious. It just shows you how craven, how manipulative, and just how opportunistic Juan Guaido truly is with this whole sad affair.
And if you guys don't remember or you weren't aware in the first place, Juan Guaido went to college at I believe American University in Washington D.C., which is basically a clearinghouse for spooks, wannabe spooks, intel assets, and very, very bad journalists. And was groomed for this position from a fairly early age because he had the backing of the lighter skinned Spanish descent non-native Venezuelans. When you get right down to what is happening in Venezuela, it's 100% class-based, but because of the way that the racial makeup of the country is, it rolls down almost entirely on the blacker and darker skinned Venezuelans. Whereas a guy with Juan Guaido, damn near whiter than me.
Well, my thing is, and what troubles me the most is you're 100% correct in that assessment. The more indigenous people of Venezuela, the darker skinned people of Venezuela have their greatest amount of success and the greatest amount of coverage and the greatest amount of the opportunity for them to thrive has come under Hugo Chavez and Nicolas Maduro.
I'm getting George Washington University from the chat. I'm sorry to interrupt, but yeah, I do. I believe that's right. Range control. My bad.
Yeah, no worries. What I wanted to touch on was essentially this is Cuba 2.0, a small group of people who are affluent in Cuba and descendants of those who are affluent in Cuba have continued a war that didn't need to continue. I mean, at the end of the day, Cuba won, and there was no need for this tense standoff 90 miles away. They're trying to do the same thing here. The richer, lighter-skinned ones, as you put it, in the United States, refugees are calling for armed conflict, that are calling for a democratically elected government to be overthrown because it doesn't work for them. It doesn't make them money. It doesn't give them power. That's what it boils down to. And Juan Guaido is personification of that.
Shit, sorry about that. And again, like, who do we have as the special envoy, U.S. special envoy to Venezuela? It's fucking Elliot Abrams. This guy is a reanimated with evil Jeff Dunham puppet who committed numerous war crimes all over South and Latin America in the 1980s at the behest of the Reagan administration. And we should be perfectly clear, when we talk about the Reagan administration, we really mean the first two terms of George H.W. Bush. Reagan was as much a puppet for the U.S. as Guaido himself is, both for the U.S. and for Venezuela. George H.W. Bush walked from the directorate of the CIA into the vice presidency almost immediately there was an assassination attempt on Reagan's life when they figured out that he was made more sense to kind of keep him wound up and push him out in front of the camera because he was more likable than H-Dub. They let him ride for a little bit until Alzheimer's completely took him away, and then he would only come out if they told him that he was going onto a movie set. Like, kind of fucking, it'd be tragic if he wasn't a war criminal.
Well, that's the thing at the end of the day too. And I also want people to keep in mind, under Reagan, Nicaragua happened, where you had the far right paramilitary slaughtering men, women, and children in that country because it was a right wing Sandinistas, all that other fun stuff. America doesn't just interfere when it comes to international events. We go in, we destroy the entire area, and then we have them play cleanup. It was Iraq, Iran. We can go back to Iran in the 1950s to go back toward that. We can talk about, Ukraine. We can talk about, Jesus, anywhere in South America, literally. But Nicaragua is one of the worst ones. If you look at the numbers and you look at the horror that the United States allowed to happen, we're having a replay of that right now in Venezuela. They don't care who does it. They just want Nicolas Maduro and any semblance of their party gone. It doesn't matter if it's drug traffickers, if it's paramilitary, they don't care.
And we're also continuing it in Nicaragua right now, and in Honduras, and in Guatemala, and again in Haiti. And we're practicing escaladio all throughout that region of the globe and Bolivia. Can't forget Bolivia. Can't forget that the Trump administration was part and parcel helping to get Jair Bolsonaro elected. And it's resource acquisitions that they're after. Bolivia is sitting on, I believe it's the world's largest supply of lithium. And Venezuelan oil. There's a ton of different mineable and pilferable minerals and raw materials all throughout where the United States goes, I think you could use a little democracy.
Here, and I don't mean to interrupt, but this is something that's always bothered me when they use that argument. What about Rwanda? What about Sudan and South Sudan when they were having the Janjaweed go through and kill men, women, and children? Where was the democracy and the humanitarianism there from the United States? It didn't exist in either Rwanda or Sudan. So please stop feeding us a line of bullshit saying that Venezuela is because of democracy, freedom, America. It's bullshit. We know it's lithium, it's oil, it's about resources that we are trying to steal, not buy, not leverage on, literally go in there and steal.
Do you know offhand, because I don't and I haven't looked, I'm trying to search here real quick, but do you know if any of our stalwart progressive DSA approved squad has commented on this at all? Do you know if presidential candidate Bernard Jesus Sanders has mentioned anything about this, or is he too busy trying to fucking get people to vote for a demented rapist?
I think he might be trying entirely too hard to do that. But right now, I'm just looking at the DSA, the Democratic Socialist of America, not to be confused with actual socialists. They are capitalists. Their statement on Venezuela, and it says, "Stop dangerous and counterproductive U.S. intervention in Venezuela. DSA categorically opposes any and all efforts by the U.S. government to intervene in the domestic policies of Venezuela." There's a long statement, but that's the most important one. It's literally the first sentence. My problem is I didn't see Elizabeth Warren. I didn't see Bernie Sanders. I didn't see anybody on the Democratic ticket come out immediately as soon as this bullshit was going down and say, enough of the imperialism. We have no need to be there other than we are trying to steal from a nation.
I mean, that's it. That's the long and short of it. It's fucking resource acquisition through destabilization, overthrow, or fucking sanctions. And we have employed all of those tactics. When I say we, I do mean the US, not me personally. Viva Maduro. Um, fuck, dude. I mean, this is just, this is, I started covering this into January, beginning of February last year. Like seriously covering.
You and
And
I were one of the first two people to hold a long conversation, I think about an hour, hour and a half show based off of this situation in Venezuela when no one else was.
yeah, it was us, it was the gray zone, and it was that like 10 minutes when Lee Camp was interviewing I might have been Anya Parampel, but it might not have been. And somebody's probably going to correct me on that, and I'll be an asshole for getting her name wrong. She's a wonderful, wonderful person. Um, I'm still kind of fucking blown away by the McAfee this morning. Smoked a little pot between now and then. Got a killer-free Assange vigil coming up tonight.
Tune into that, ladies and gentlemen. Anybody who's spread far and wide, let's get some eyeballs onto that, because it's absolutely amazing experience, and it's going to help further the not only the goal of freeing Julian Assange, but bringing people to be aware of your rights being trampled on and how they are being snatched away from you. So please tune into that.
We are in the Panhandle. We're getting ready to have Representative John Ratcliffe of Texas as our next ODNI. It's been highly recommended by none other than AG John Ashcroft. What could go wrong? He says he can't wait to talk to Pompeo. I bet he can't, dude. I bet. Look, John Ashcroft is the guy who covered up the titty on Lady Justice. I remember that vividly when that went down. Also, part of John Ashcroft's inner circle, one James Comey.
Yep.
Who went on to did he get drafted by the Celtics? Was he like their white for that year? Or
as a Celtics fan, no, for sure.
One of the biggest fucking scandals of the Obama administration by brushing all of Hillary Clinton's emails under the table.
Oh, and somehow gets blamed for the whole thing by Hillary Clinton supporters for being the reason why she lost. Amazingly, I don't know what universe they live in, but I
when
need the
we
drugs.
all know, Jason, that it was Anthony Weiner's dick.
Okay, I can't argue that. That's too sound of an argument.
Anthony Weiner's penis, the most dangerous penis in electoral. Or you don't get a fucking handle like Carlos Danger if that shit ain't wrecking shop. And man, he wrecked shop.
Oh shit, that was the best.
You had a couple of things that you wanted to specifically talk about, and I know you only got about 15 more minutes. So why don't we move on to that?
Some of Steve's and I's best conversations in the last 6 or 7 years comes on the question of leadership. When there's people that are chomping at the bit to be leader, or when there's a feeling of we need to put a single solitary soul as the figurehead position. We've always had great conversations about this, and it's something that I'm finding more and more annoying. I did a video on it earlier. It's irritating the hell out of me, because I feel like that takes away agency from each and every one of us when we are clamoring for a Bernie Sanders or an AOC or an Omar, name whoever you want, by trying to go out there and who's our next leader? Why can't you? I firmly believe that the people need to wake up, look at themselves in the mirror, and in their communities be the leader. We don't need Bernie Sanders from Vermont leading people in California. We don't need somebody. You are your own leader in your communities. And what I wanted to really touch on, and maybe your audience can help, why is there need to find someone to be a leader of a movement when, if you do it correctly in each and every community, this movement won't be natural. It will take its course, and it will do what we want it to do, rather than waiting around for Bernie Sanders, who 2 times, I love you, Bernie, I do, but 2 times ruined any opportunity for a progressive, a center-left type to win.
So, okay, here's the thing, man. For arguably since Edward Bernays wrote the book, but most heavily in post-World War II era, the Americans have been conditioned, like, the second you get out the womb, to only think of politics in terms of the Republicans and the Democrats are the end all be all, and these two parties take up all of the political space on the entire political compass. So when you get someone like Sheepdog Dog, Bernie Sanders, or you get someone like, shiny new Alex from the block in AOC, and they start talking about really, like, liberal, but barely left of center ideas, the inclination in even quote unquote liberal media is to paint them as a fucking flaming red socialist. And so as long as as long as there are cages around what kinds of conversations people are allowed to see, and as long as these parameters are being set by oligarchs and our fucking Luciferian pedophile fucking shape-shifting lizard motherfuckers, as long as there's a cage around the conversation, then you're always going to have this reaction to the most left people have been exposed to is going to be the most left kind of leader that, as Matt Stoller puts it, the frightened authoritarian children of the DSA are going to seek out.
But that's the thing at the end of the day. I mean, for example, I've been very public about my support of the Socialist Equality Party and Joe Kishore. Go check him out, at Jay Kishore on Twitter. We need to introduce to people that there's more than two parties and that they need to take upon themselves. If they want change, we can't wait for somebody to come save us. We allegedly have 12 years and our environment's completely shot to shit for our kids. The economy is definitely, class warfare doesn't even begin to cover how this economy is skewed against us and for a very small portion. When you have globalism that's occurred, and I'm not anti-globalism, I am anti-neoliberalism, but when you have a society that's set up to keep you as an indentured servant, and it's obvious, it's right there, and you have SEP and you have other parties that exist, why do we keep going back to the same stupid thought process, binary thought process of Republican or Democrat?
Steph Zamorano chimed in on one of my Twitter posts yesterday and said, look, even 100 years ago, Teddy Roosevelt was clamoring for a third party. We need a third party in this country. We really need a third party. And I responded with, like, we do. We've got a third and a fourth and so on and
Right.
so forth. What we don't have is a legitimate electoral process or a country that isn't ran by the national security state. Until those two things change, voting, regardless of whether it's for your third, fourth, fifth, sixth, or seventh party, is the laziest and least effective political action you can take.
And that's the biggest issue, though, is trying to get people off their couches. We talk about torches and pitchforks all the time. Amongst people of our ilk, that would be leftists who actually believe in a revolutionary change, that's like, hey, pitches and torches, or pitchforks and torches. But to get somebody from off the couch in middle America who got done watching Ellen and then whatever else comes after Ellen, to get them to be like, your shit is fucked unless you join us. It's hard to do that progressive get into revolutionary fervor from watching Ellen. And that's my biggest thing, is trying to connect the two to show that even though they're comfortable now, their time is ending very soon when it comes to comfort.
No, I mean, that's why there's so much garbage that's streaming for free on Amazon, Netflix, Hulu, all that shit. The This situation is untenable. We've got over 30 million people out of work right now that just in the last like month or so that have filed. That has
Right.
nothing to do with however many tens of million were already out of work or and stop trying to get unemployment. That has absolutely nothing to do with 1099 contractors who are getting fucked right now. It's got
I'm one of them.
yeah, and it's got absolutely nothing to do for the people who work under the table. You know, we have more people unemployed now than we did during the Great Depression. We have the numbers and the reason to go do something about it. And I'm going to reiterate what Reverend Annie Chambers said to me when I asked her, what did Malcolm X tell you when you were growing up that we can listen to now and absorb? And she said, Minister Malcolm said, we can only get what we organize for and take. That's where we're fucking at right now. Oh, and by the way, this Sunday, 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. On the East Coast, we're going to spend some Mother's Day with the Reverend Annie Chambers.
All right.
So that's going to be fucking incredible. It is. So weird. My week starts off with John Goddamn McAfee and ends with Reverend Annie Chambers. Like, how
That's
fucking
beautiful,
weird
though.
is my world?
You're talking to voices that don't get a lot of exposure to a lot of people. They're brilliant in their fields. Don't get me wrong. They're amazing, but they're not going to be as widely distributed as though you are making sure that they become, so that people can hear these brilliant people and get the information, process the information, and figure out what they want to do next from these experts and other types that you have on the show.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I like to think that I like to think that what I do here is just, you know, one more step that people can take onto their path. And like normally if you start to figure out that the horse race is bullshit and you kind of gravitate or you've been watching Jimmy Dore, like the next logical step is to go to where the stuff that Jimmy Dore doesn't cover is being talked about. And then you go to where the Shit Slow News Day isn't covering to go find, you know, like, but there's, I'm pretty stoked on the guests that have come on here and the conversations that have come out of it. I really am. We got about 5 or so minutes. And if anybody has any questions, go ahead and throw them in the chat right now. I also want to mention that I should look this up because I'm going to get it fucking wrong. I'm doing a couple of interviews this week. Tomorrow I'm on Big Talk, Little Talk. And Saturday I'm on the Hear Me Out podcast. The time tomorrow is 3 o'clock Pacific, 6 East. And the Hear Me Out interview is 5 Pacific, 8 o'clock in the evening. We've got the Free Assange Vigil tonight with Australian Deputy Mayor, Councilwoman Philippa Veach, who is a Green Party member there, where they actually have a Green Party that isn't fucking controlled opposition. And we're trying to field a fucking Russia-gating turf, as Sleepy Josh so eloquently put it this morning. That was spot on there, brother. What? No, I mean, no bullshit, man. Like Howie Hawkins. And we might as well talk for a minute or two before I see questions roll in about the fucking just cock tease that Jesse Ventura gave disaffected progressives all over the country.
I love it.
Like, that's like, okay, I'm gonna stick it in, and instead of your dick, you use like half of your pinky nail. Like, that's what Jesse Ventura did to all these motherfuckers who were like, they already had the flyers printed up for Jesse and Nina Turner. They already had fucking, you know, victory songs written. There was like, I'm not fucking like, these people are begging to be led. They're begging to be led, Jason. They don't want to fucking, they don't want to be a whole human being.
That's what I wanted. This all ties in nicely to what you and I have been discussing this entire show. At the end of the day, let's look at Jesse Ventura, who was a part of the Reform Party in the late 90s, 2000s, which was a center-right, libertarian-esque party. And to go from that to all of a sudden being a potential Green Party candidate just reeks of opportunism. That Howie Hawkins doing his thing. The one thing I do like about his campaign is the H2O thing. I mean, I appreciate it, you know, science reference. That's it so far. I'm looking at the Green Party and I cannot take, I'm probably, again, going to go to hell and be chastised. I can't take a party seriously that shows up once every 4 years and looks for disaffected leftists. That's not a real party. That is not a real option. That is not a real choice. A party that builds from the ground up in every city, every community across this country and works its way up to a presidential candidate is the only way to go. And again, SEP, Socialist Alternative, Socialist Equality Party, there is real people who have real positions, who have ran real races as opposed to one race every 4 years. Chastise me, crucify me, I'm ready.
To be fair, there are a handful of Greens that have like city council positions and maybe state house, this, that, you know, but they're very few and far between.
They've been around for 50, 60 years. What's the excuse?
Yeah,
they should be as...
And once upon a time, Howie Hawkins, who did kind of co-found the original Green Party, which was just an environmentalist group, not a political party. Their roots are in environmental activism. Howie Hawkins co-wrote the Green New Deal that didn't get fucking corporatized and was delivered through a soul rendering process by
which is great work. That was great work.
But he's caught up in that DC bubble. And DC bubble groupthink says you have to believe Russiagate. You have to believe Russiagate. You have to believe Russiagate. Now, he's tried to walk that back a few times, just like he immediately 3 weeks after his Primo Nutmeg interview last year, that's when he put out a statement about Julian Assange, but not after he had dead named and continued to dead name Chelsea Manning. I have no idea what happened to Jason. I don't. Maybe he'll come back. Maybe he won't. Right? There was a question for him too. Shit. Right? Yeah, if you can't hear Sleepy Josh, he is echoing the fuck Howie Hawkins sentiment. Use core IMF for ruining supplemental resource losses. Interesting. That'll be an interesting question for Jay if he comes back in. Range control. He's got a handful of economic theories. Well, shit, guys. I already did all my goddamn promotions. I'm supposed to have Vanessa Beeley on this week. I'm trying to coordinate with her when she's gonna come on. I'm supposed to have Corey Morningstar on this week, or this weekend. Monday, 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. Whitney fucking Webb coming back on the show. She's got a hell of an article out on Last American Vagabond right now, all about what DARPA's been up to and how they have a role to play in COVID-19 84. It is, you guys know, man. You guys know when Whitney comes on, it fucking makes your brain hurt in a really good way. Hey, man. Hey, I have a question for you from the chat.
Yeah.
What is your general sense on whether the U.S. core or IMF are the ruling scepter of global resource policy?
One more time?
Okay. What is your general sense on whether the U.S. corporations or IMF are the ruling scepter of the global resource policy? Of global resource policy, like how global resources are
right. I think if you look at them, you look at the World Bank, you look at any neoliberal faction that gives money in demand of austerity measures to keep third world countries in a third world status, second world countries in a second world status, and so on and so forth. These loans and these grants, alleged grants, but these loans are absolutely a horrendous deal for whoever's in need of it. Usually these countries have hyperinflation. They're already facing austerity measures, basically next to no government services to begin with. And then places like that will demand that they go even further in the austerity measures. I'm adamantly opposed to both the World Bank and the IMF.
And let's be clear about this. Like IMF policy, World Bank policy, like even U.S. corporate policy, most of it is laid out at places like Malta and Davos and these convention, World Economic Forum, where again, nationless, stateless, sociopathic billionaires are setting global resource policy. The vehicles by which it's meted out are absolutely the IMF and the World Bank, and to a certain extent the U.S. Federal Reserve in the way that the largest 100 corporations move money. But the policy itself that takes shape at the World Economic Forum. And one of the reasons I'm really happy about finally getting Corey Morningstar on the show is because that's her area of expertise. She's got brain-breaking amounts of research going into this, what they're calling the fourth industrial revolution, and they're using Lil Greta Thunberg's ass as the brand marketing for it, and all of these NGOs who are funded by, again, billionaire sociopaths, who are also, by the way, funding your Extinction Rebellion and your Sunrise Movement and all of those groups. What their plan, now that they've ruined the planet for the most part, is to hold what's left of it hostage and ransom it back to us, bit by bit by bit.
I couldn't have said it any better myself. When it comes to the WEF, when it comes to the IMF, when it comes to World Bank, things of that nature, it's absolute insanity, and it will continue the problem, not provide a solution to it. We have to look at this through an economic lens when it comes to all this, and basically ask ourselves, who stands to gain the most? Then you'll have your bad guy. That's it right there. Who stands to benefit the most? Is it a multinational? Is it an individual? What's that?
What's that in Latin? Param Coram? What's that in Latin?
Oh, the agitator.
No. For who benefits? Que bueno? Or bono?
Yeah.
Que bono?
Que bono.
Que bono. Okay.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, you have to. That's how we can start determining. Because you brought up some great points. Progressives organizations such as Sunrise Movement, etc., they're being funded by the same people that we supposedly oppose. How does that work? That's like the Koch brothers loaning me $1 million to be a socialist online. I'm just saying.
Careers, man, you let me know. You know. And I was gonna say, speaking of Sunrise Movement, Robbie Yeager, the Rob Lit a Fire, researcher extraordinaire, will be on, I believe, Friday, maybe Saturday during the day. I gotta double check with him, but holy fuck, was it fun the last time he was on. That guy has documents like he's Alex Jones.
Hey, that's evidence. I respect those with evidence. But I am out of here, my fellow wonderful people.
All right, man. Well, thank you very much for being on the show, for running through this with me. I appreciate your takes as always. Please let the folks know where they can find you.
At Paranquern on Twitter is usually where I live mostly, because Twitter is the last vestige of being able to be myself without being censored. And I have links on Progressive Army and Real Progressives for my writing.
Hell yeah. And you guys, if you're so inclined, will see me in a little bit over 2 hours on the Free Assange Vigil. Philippa Beach. Krish Mohan will also be joining us. I freaking love it when he's on. And I believe we get a Comrade Misty as a guest host tonight, and a Christian, and a Kendra Christian. So that'll be fucking cool, and I hope you join us. That'll do it for Slow News Day. I'm Steve Boykinen. Good luck to us all. Go watch that McAfee interview.